Hi, everyone.
Hi there, my name's Todd Stubendick. I'm the I'm the state director of AARP Nebraska. I'm joined by the executive director of the Great Plains Black History Museum, Eric Ewing. Eric, welcome to our live stream today to talk about Juneteenth.
Todd, well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate this opportunity to share this information with folks.
Very good. Let me give a quick bio of Eric. Eric is a native of Omaha. He's got 3 grown children and 3 grandchildren, which is great. He's also retired from the U.S. Navy. Thank you, Eric, for your service. Eric has a history in academia, having been both a professor and a dean. And Eric serves on a number of boards in the community and is very much a community leader in addition to being the leader of the Great Plains Black History Museum. So, Eric, today we're on to talk about Juneteenth. This is a subject that I admit that I didn't know a lot about until more recent years. And I appreciate you coming on to talk about Juneteenth and providing some information for those who are watching us on Facebook at this point. I always like to think of history in terms of the story and telling the story of history. I think that's a great way to understand it. And for me, this story starts with the Civil War. President Lincoln signs the Emancipation Proclamation in September of 1862. It goes into effect on January 1st of 1863. And you know what we're all taught in school is that act freed all the enslaved people for the 10 southern states in rebellion. But what was the practical effect for slaves in the South of the Emancipation Proclamation?
Well, the interesting thing is, everyone has that assumption. It automatically freed all the slaves. As you mentioned, there were 10 states that had tried to secede from the U.S. What it did is it did free those slaves, those individual slaves, but it did not free the slaves of states who had not tried, who was a slave state who had not tried to secede from the U.S. So it did not grant freedom to everyone. And matter of fact, what else you having a conversation on Juneteenth? It didn't free slaves in the state of Texas until 1865.
Okay. And even in those states, the 10 states that were in rebellion, the practical effect was if someone was enslaved there, they weren't free unless they were able to escape and get to past enemy lines and to the north still, right?
True, yes. And
Yeah.
even though, by definition, they were free, but truly they were not provided the tools and the means necessarily to be free.
Right. So then the story moves on, and the Civil War goes on for another 2 years after that. And Lee surrenders at Appomattox in April of 1865. The war ends. The story we're now telling on Juneteenth sort of moves to Texas. Texas had not been a battleground state, but a lot of Southern landowners had moved to Texas during the war and brought their slaves with them. And from my research, there were 250,000 enslaved folks that were in Texas at the end of the Civil War. What happens in Texas at the end of the Civil War, and how's that connection to Juneteenth?
Well, again, as you were saying, a lot of slave owners did relocate their slaves to that particular area, and more or less trying to prevent having to set those individuals free. And what ended up happening was June 19th of 1865, there was the General Order number 3, and it was read by General Gordon Granger in Galveston, Texas. And it started off saying, beginning with these words, the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. And as you said, technically that freed all the individuals, and everything was supposed to be good from there on.
So that was officially on June 19th,
Yes.
1865, and that is what we now call Juneteenth. How was it celebrated that first in June 19th, 1865? How was the first one celebrated?
Well, for the most part, in early celebrations, what I've discovered is a lot of enslaved individuals, once they gained their freedom, they spent a lot of their time trying to relocate, try to locate loved ones, family
Hmm.
members who had been maybe sold away from them, and trying to rekindle that connection with the family members. So it was celebrated more on that line, and I believe roughly about in 1867 in Austin, Texas. Then they had the first celebration recognizing that the black independence.
Okay. And so how has Juneteenth, the observation, the celebration of it, evolved and expanded since that time?
Well, it's a family gathering. People get together. In some cases, family reunions are held during that time. Parades are held in throughout the country. In Texas, I know it's considered a federal holiday. So from a work standpoint, people aren't required to work, especially individuals that work for the federal government. They're not required to work, and it's an opportunity to recognize and celebrate black independence.
Yep. This is maybe a difficult question, but this is such an important historical event and has become such a big cultural observance. Why wasn't I taught this in school? Were you taught this in school?
No.
Okay.
It is unfortunate. This is another part of history that is not necessarily shared. I myself did not know about this until maybe 15 to 20 years ago.
Hmm.
And in finding out about it, I just kind of did a little research, but I really did not necessarily know the significance of it. But as time has gone on, I've felt that this is a celebration that should be celebrated, as a federal holiday, because it is a part of American history that should be remembered. As you said, you didn't learn about it in school. I didn't learn about it in school. I often share with people that I learned more about Black history in a 3 month time period when I took my first Black Studies course in college.
Yep.
Prior to that, K through 12, you learn bits and pieces. And one thing you definitely don't learn is your local history and how it impacts. And with this being something that basically spun out of the state of Texas, then I would have never heard about it here in Omaha, Nebraska. And I do believe Texas really, their history, as far as it's shared with students, are kind of flossed over or glossed over and may not necessarily be clear and accurate. I believe that one time there was someone looking to change slavery, the term slavery, to indentured servants.
Hmm.
And if you know the difference, there's a total difference between the two.
Yeah, exactly. So I know this year might be different here in Omaha, especially with COVID-19. But how is Juneteenth traditionally celebrated in Omaha or Nebraska in general?
Well, again, family gatherings. I know the local NAACP organization usually puts on a parade throughout the North Omaha community, and then there's also educational opportunities. I believe the Monday before Juneteenth each year, there's a group that goes down to the Douglas County Courthouse, and out in front they read, I believe it's the Emancipation Proclamation. There's a flag raising ceremony that's held at the local library in the North Omaha area, and it's just a time to educate people on that, because as you said, and myself, we didn't learn about that when we were young. And so it's an opportunity to educate the younger audience so they're aware of those things early on.
I think I read in the paper today in Omaha, at least, that I think the parade is delayed maybe until August, but there are still some other things happening in communities tomorrow in observance of that. So people can definitely find that if they're interested in that.
Yes, Lincoln, I believe, is going to hold a parade tomorrow.
Okay.
I did read some things about that. My biggest concern and what I myself, try to do is whenever I leave the office, and if I'm going to come in contact with people, I wear my mask, and I just hope folks are practicing social distancing and mask wearing, because as we're aware, there's been an uptick in cases, and it's not because more people are being tested.
Excellent advice. Agree completely on the masks. The science is pretty clear about how quickly we could get this under control if we all just took care of each other by wearing a mask when we're out in public. So Nebraska recognized Juneteenth in 2009, and every state except 3, and I'm going to call them out: North Dakota, South Dakota, Hawaii. Either Juneteenth is considered a holiday or has some sort of observance of it. You'd mentioned a little bit earlier. Can you talk a little bit more about your thoughts on should Juneteenth be a federal holiday, and have there been efforts to do that?
I myself believe that it should be. As you mentioned, in 2009, the city of Omaha recognized it, but they recognized it as a celebrations, but not necessarily to address it becoming a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think if it was recognized as a holiday, that would bring more awareness to it, and then would serve as a better educational tool.
Yeah, absolutely. I also noticed that there's several companies that are out there moving to make it an observance in their company as well, which is an interesting. The private sector stepping up and saying that this isn't something that we should all observe and celebrate. Yes.
Well, it's just like with Dr. King Day. It took a while for some states to get on board. Some came, they had to be drug across, and I believe Arizona was the last state to come on board with that particular, to recognize that as a federal holiday. But the thing is it's noted as a federal holiday, but it's not a day off. It's a day of service.
Right. Yeah. Would you see the same sort of thing for Juneteenth, or should it be more like the 4th of July, where we're celebrating with family and friends?
I think it could be both. Yeah. And I think it maybe not a day of service, but a day of educating. Yeah. Another opportunity to educate people, because, a lot of people, some people may say, well, this is something that deals with Black people. I'm not Black, so why should I care about it? First of all, I always tell people it's American history first. It's American history that involves African Americans. So whether you were Black or not, it's still a part of American history, which means you should celebrate it in the same way. The same could be said about the 4th of July.
True. Yeah. So, Eric, you're the executive director of the Great Plains Black History Museum. Tell me about the Great Plains Black History Museum.
Well, we opened its doors back in 1975. It was started by Mrs. Bertha Calloway. She wanted to ensure that people became aware of the accomplishments and the contributions that African Americans had towards the United States. And in particular, she wanted to focus on the Great Plains, because that was an area in which she felt was kind of neglected when it came to the history of African Americans and their role throughout the Great Plains. So she wanted to focus on that. We still focus on that, but we also focus beyond there, because we want to ensure that people are being educated and learning things about African American history throughout the United States. Because I always say, you can hear the same story from different people, but yet it's still a little different, but it's still the same story, and it allows the museum to tell it from their perspective. Our mission is to preserve, celebrate, and educate all people of the contributions and achievements of African Americans throughout the Great Plains of America.
Okay. What sort of exhibits do you have?
Our current exhibits we have, and this exhibit went up 2 days before Memorial. The Friday before Memorial Day, when all the unfortunate things occurred. The exhibit is called "Citizenship in the Age of Jim Crow," and it talks about basically from a little bit prior to the Emancipation Proclamation and the history of African Americans fighting for to be citizens in America, and the steps and the amendments that had to be added to make all people born in the country citizens of the country. We also have two exhibits. They counter off each other, called Hate and Hope. Of course, kind of self-explanatory with the hate, and then the hope kind of focuses on more positive things that as it relates to African Americans. We have a condensed version of an exhibit called 24th and Glory. That exhibit, when it's ran during Native Omaha Week, is a larger exhibit, but right now it's smaller. And what it does, it focuses on the various African American athletes that have come from Omaha. A lot of people aren't aware of that, but just from Omaha, and in particularly the North Omaha area, you have representation in all four of the major sports outside of one. You have a Hall of Famer in baseball, in Bob Gibson. You have a Hall of Famer in basketball, and Bob Boozer, also Olympic gold medal winner. You have a Hall of Famer in Gail Sayers in football. You have a Heisman Trophy winner. You have a boxing champion. And then if you want to include Omaha overall, you have the first African American to play quarterback in the NFL, to start at quarterback in the NFL, in Marlon Briscoe, all from Omaha. And then you have other athletes as well that have gone out and made their name in the athletic world. Then we have a even more condensed exhibit. It's when it's on full display during the month of March and April and half of May. It's called Influential African American Women. It's put up in March to celebrate women's history, and it focuses on African American women from a local perspective and then a national perspective. Great.
Back to the first exhibit that you talked about on Jim Crow. I think that's an important part of our earlier conversation. The Emancipation Proclamation and Juneteenth, while it technically ended slavery, it didn't create equality.
No.
And that struggle continued and continues today.
Yes.
And we see it happening, history right in front of our eyes. And so a lot of important stuff happening right now.
Yeah, I tell people we have some artifacts that date back to, prior to the Emancipation Proclamation. We have a book called 12 Years a Slave, and it's a original publication. It was published back in 1853. We also have various other things that talk about different events that occurred here in Omaha. And I tell people, if you took away the date and you ran the caption of that event alongside events of today, you wouldn't be able to tell when this occurred. So it is pretty interesting how some things are repeating themselves.
So how can folks visit you? Are there virtual options? Can they see you in person? What's your status?
Yes. Well, right now we are offering virtual tours, some similar to what we're doing right now, and we will be opening our doors after the 4th of July. We'll be limiting our crowd size at a time to 8 individuals. Mask will be required, and it will be by appointment. If you want to schedule a live in-person tour, if you want to schedule a virtual tour, you can reach out to the museum. You can contact me at info.gpbhm. Excuse me. Let me give you my email address so that way it's easier.
Yep.
You can contact me at Eric, spelled E-R-I-C, just as you see on the screen, Ewing, EWING, don't include the L. .G as in golf, P as in Papa, B as in Bravo, H as in hotel, M as in Mike, at gmail.com.
Very good. Also, I believe your website is gpblackhistorymuseum.org. So I bet
Yes.
folks can go on there and get information as well. And it's on our screen right now is the website. I also believe you have a Facebook page that people can find and get further information as well. Where are you located as well? Give out your
Our address is 2221 North 24th Street. We're right across the street from the Omaha Star and the old historical Jewel building, which is the home of the Dreamland Ballroom.
Very good. Anything else people should know about the museum?
Well, tours are free. We do have memberships available. You can find more information on that on our website. Donations are gladly accepted and appreciated. That's as a nonprofit, though, that's one of the things that helps keep us here to serve the community and to educate individuals. And so we gladly accept donations, and we appreciate that. And we're hoping AARP reaches out and helps us out as well.
Very good. And any last words on Juneteenth?
Well, again, I think if you're not aware of it, you should take time out to educate yourself and find out a little bit more about it and the significance of it, because it is a part of American history. It may have not directly affected you or your ancestors, but still it played a role in American history. It will also can lead you down the rabbit hole to find out a little bit more information, because, as I was mentioning about the Emancipation Proclamation, there was talk that President Lincoln did not actually want to sign that into law. And when he wrote it, he made it not take effect until the end of the year, because then that way, if the southern states that had seceded from the northern states chose to come back, then he would not have to initiate and put that order into law.
We have a complicated history on this.
Oh, yes.
Very much so. Eric, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing a little bit about this. It's been very informative for me, and I'm sure for all of our folks watching. Please reach out to the websites that we've given if you want to learn more about the Great Plains Black History Museum. I'm looking forward to getting over and visiting you hopefully soon here with my mask.
Yes.
And again, we appreciate you coming on and joining us today, Eric.
Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate it, Todd. And if you want to reach out to me for something in the future, we'd be happy to serve.
Very good. Happy Juneteenth.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Thanks, everyone.